So what I'd like to talk about, the title of this little workshop here is Zen and the Art of Love, which is perhaps a little bit presumptuous because, as I was saying, I really don't have any formal credentials in Zen, and you can ask my ex-girlfriends what I know about love. But as I've been an informal student of Zen Buddhism for a number of years, I found it's a good philosophy to try and integrate into your life in a lot of different ways. It gives you a good perspective to look at many different things in your life, which, I think we all understand that you don't want to compartmentalize your life, that your spiritual life should flow into, all this kind of mundane stuff. Now, let me give you like the little 5-minute, what is Buddhism, what is Zen? I don't know, this might be old hat to all you guys, you might know more about it than I do, but just to make sure that everyone has a little bit of understanding who these people are. The Buddha. You may have heard the name. About 2,500 years ago, in India, there was a prince named Siddhartha Gautama, and he got really interested in the question of human suffering. The legend says that when he was born, there was a prophecy made that if he stayed in the in the material world, stayed in the political world, he'd become a great conqueror, and unite all these kingdoms and be a great king. But if he went to the spiritual world, he would be a great redeemer of humanity. And his parents wanted him to follow in the family business and stay a king. So they were really overprotective, didn't let him connect with the spiritual at all. He was always distracted with beauty. But one day he stuck out of the palace and he saw all the crap that goes on outside: old age, sickness, death, poverty. All these were completely new to him. But then in the middle of all this, says the legend, he saw one spiritual seeker, one homeless mendicant who was calm through it all. He said, I want to know what that guy knows, if he can keep it together with all this ugliness going on around him. So he went, he tried this, he tried that, he tried the other thing, and nothing worked. He almost starved himself to death following ascetic practice, and that didn't work. So he sat down under a tree and meditated. He said, I'm just going to sit down here and think about it for a while. And then he got his great enlightenment. And basically, the core teachings of Buddhism are what are called the Four Noble Truths. The first noble truth is that it's often translated as life is suffering, which is pretty depressing. It would be more accurate to translate it as conditioned states of existence are unsatisfactory. It's kind of a mouthful there. The actual word that's used in the Sanskrit or Pali, whatever the language is, that is the oldest, is dukkha, and it means out of joint. Like if you dislocated your shoulder, or if the wheel of your cart slips off of its axle, if things aren't moving very well, dukkha. That's something is wrong here. It's a statement of the problem. Before you can solve the problem, you gotta understand that the problem exists. So okay, we got a problem. What is the problem? What's the source of all this suffering going on? And the Buddha said that the cause of suffering is desire and attachment. So already, you can see how we might apply that to sexuality, romance, love, all that good stuff. It's attachment thinking. There is, of course, your physical level of suffering, but the Buddha had lived a life of luxury. He was a prince, and it didn't remove his suffering. He still had trouble. He wasn't satisfied. We see celebrities, people who have every material thing, what we think is a great life. Look at all this. Oh, look at this rich and famous person. They got it all, and then they go and blow their brains out, or they get addicted to heroin because they're still suffering and trying to find something to ease their pain. So it's not material things. It's something that's going on inside of us. It's our thinking. It's our grasping onto things that is getting us into trouble. The third noble truth is that there is a way out, and the fourth noble truth is his specific description of how to change your mind. The Eightfold Path. Basically, how to live a life, how to cultivate the mental habits that will help you not grab all the things. So that's the Buddha. He's about 2500 BC. And his teachings spread throughout the East. Now, it's kind of an interesting split that happens in Buddha's teaching in the years after his death. He founded a monastic order, And there were some people who led. Well, this is what it's all about. It's all about us monks. It's all about us guys who renounce and women. But enough sexism crept back into the picture that for a long time there were no ordained Buddhist women in Theravada countries. This strain of Buddhism I'm talking about now is Theravada, the way of the elders. And this strain was kind of restricted to Ceylon and India and Burma. Thailand, if I remember properly, is Theravada Buddhism. The thing about it was that it was all centered around monastic practice and a lot of rules, which is why this stuff didn't really leave its area until really the 20th century. Because there were so many rules that the Buddha had set up, and it could be something like, dude, don't make that noise when you eat. Don't put your robe on like that. It doesn't look dignified. And that went in the rules because the Buddha said it. It went into the rules the same as don't kill, don't steal.
I mean, isn't what happened with the Buddha similar to what happened with Jesus? The Buddha didn't actually write it.
Correct. Yes.
So a lot of people could be inserting their own opinions.
Correct. Now there is, I believe that the scholarship is believed to be a little bit better in the case of the Buddha because of the oral tradition of India. They had a good oral tradition. He was an above-ground person who got to teach for many decades, rather than being basically an executed criminal whose people had to hide out for a long time. Although there were actually 3 attempts made on the Buddha's life. His teaching stirred up enough trouble. His cousin, I think. But again, when you get into the myths, so you can probably translate it. Devadatta, yeah, he was involved in some 1903. But so there was this very rule-oriented Buddhism, and then there was another form that was more focused on this plane. This is the Mahayana. Mahayana means the big boat, the big vehicle, the greater vehicle.
So which one was Hinayana?
It's sometimes called Hinayana. They prefer the term Theravada, way of the elder. Hinayana, it means a small vehicle, and it's kind of an insulting term by understanding of the application there. You got a little. Ours is bigger than yours. The Mahayana guy said, we're all... The Mahayana guy did not say Mahayana guy said, we're all in this together. We all get to nirvana, enlightenment, all together, one thing. So, yeah, whatever you got, bring it. We'll take it. Any idea you've got, any deity you've got, we'll take it. Any practice you've got, we take it. All these rules, we're gonna get rid of some of these rules on the edge, and we'll be more adaptable. So, like one of the rules that the Theravadins followed was you were only allowed to own 2 or 3 thin robes. Those are all the clothes you could own if you were a monk. Now imagine you're in India, and you want to go to China and tell people about this great spiritual teacher, the Buddha. You got to go over mountains, whole high mountains, and all you have in the way of clothing is 2 robes. You are not going to get very far over the mountains. The Mahayana guy said, this is not an important rule, and we're going to let this go by the wayside. Get some warm clothes, and go to China and spread our teaching. That's the strain that Zen Buddhism comes out of. Now the problem is that Mahayana took everything, and in my opinion, it's sort of like barnacles on a rock. It gets to the point where you can't see the rock anymore. Mahayana kind of got stuck with a lot of speculation. The Buddha was about here and now. What can we do to help you change your mind so you're not suffering? Now, here, right now. Not in a future lifetime, not when you get reincarnated. I'm not talking about reincarnation. If people ask the Buddha about it, he said, no. Now, here, what can we do about your suffering? That's the core of the Buddhist teaching. The people got involved in speculation, superstition, talking about deities and gods. And those can be good practices in the right context, but they got attached to those.
There were a lot of, those practices, whatever, found in that Buddhist tradition. Japanese Buddhism all basically, kind of remains from the previous religions that they had.
Exactly.
Because they were using, or maybe the Buddhists had this thing called
expedient means. Yeah, they would use whatever, just as the Catholics, would grab the local deity. Oh, we'll make a saint. We'll make Saint Bridget.
Exactly.
You know, we can't get the Irish to stop talking about Bridget, so we'll make her a saint. You know, the Buddhists came along and said, oh, we can't get the people to stop talking about whoever, and so yeah, we'll make them a bodhisattva. We'll make them sort of mind or deed. We'll make them some kind. We'll bring them in somehow. We'll make them a guardian deed. A lot of the local gods and different cultures that turned into guardian deed. They converted. But the problem is then you get all this superstition. People start looking at the deity and worshiping the deity and getting hung up on that and worrying about what can I do to ensure that my next life is going to be good. No, here, now. So along comes this idea of Zen. Zen goes back to about 500 AD. And the famous legendary character who's considered the founder of Zen was Bodhidharma. In Japan, they call him Daruma. And famous story about him, he got an interview with the Emperor of China. And Buddhism had already spread into China by this point, but it was this kind of corrupted Buddhism with all this superstition and all like that. You know, but he had an interview with the Emperor, and the Emperor had, he said, hey, you know, I have built all these temples. I hired people to copy all these sutras, the holy texts. I had all these stupas, you know, the forerunners of pagodas, these kind of mounds that they use for services, for worship, for focus, and practice. I did all this great stuff, so I'm good, right? You know, I've accumulated a lot of merit, and I'm gonna, you know, I think he wanted to hear that, you know, his next life, oh, you're going to get reincarnated in Pure Land, and from there it's just a hop, skip, and a jump to Nirvana. But Bodhidharma wasn't down with that. He said, you know, no, you have not accumulated any merit. So the Emperor asks, you know, I guess he figures, okay, I'm doing it wrong. What do I got to do? You know, so what's holy? What is holy? Nothing is holy. You know, the Emperor, I think, maybe is getting a little bit pissed off by this one. And he says, who are you, anyway, to tell me something like this? And Bodhidharma's answer is very important. He says, I don't know. And a lot of Zen teachers really bring that out as an important point. I don't know. Because when you know, that's that grasping mind. That's that grabbing onto something. You ever try and teach somebody something new, a skill, you know, and they're like, yeah, I know. Or maybe you've done that. I've been on both ends of that myself. And when you know, you're stuck. It's a great guard against learning or change. But if you could say, I don't know, then you're open to change. A famous expression in Zen, Japanese Zen, beginner's mind. That the expert's mind, there are only a few possibilities. Beginner's mind, the possibilities are endless. So when you can say, I don't know, then you're open to seeing what's really there. You're not hung up on your own interpretation and your own idea. So this is considered, excuse me. Well, the interview didn't go very well, obviously, with the Emperor, and Bodhidharma went and sat in a cave at the famous Shaolin Monastery for a couple of years, so goes the legend, and taught the monks there some exercises that developed into Kung Fu and all the Asian fighting arts and all the Asian body healing arts like Shiatsu and Tuina, or so goes the legend. If you buy that legend, I will like to invite you over to my next poker game. But, that's the way it is with religion. Yeah, there's very little evidence that Bodhidharma even existed. There's like one mention of somebody by that name in an ancient text, so it's all mythology. All right, so what does any of this have to do? What can we get from this in terms of sexuality and relationships? Okay, this is our to conclude the general orientation here. So we mentioned that attachment, desire, getting stuck on something is in Buddhism considered to be the origin of our suffering. And we want to act and think in a way that gets us out of that trap. So one of the basic ethical guidelines is to not misuse sexuality. What do we mean by misuse sexuality, though? So Buddhism gives us an interesting variety of models to look at in terms of what is appropriate use of sexuality. Of course, you've got the Buddha and his original monastic group who gave it up. Celibacy, boom, that's it. No more. You are done with that. Once you shaved your head, you were celibate, and that was it. Then on the other hand, you have my favorite Zen lunatic, Ikkyu Soja, who was actually the chief abbot of one of the big temples in Kyoto. So he's really high-powered lineage. He's not just some guy over on the side there. He was the abbot at Daitokuji in Kyoto. But he also wrote some crazy erotic poetry. He wore his monk's robe to the whorehouse. And when he was in his 70s, took up with a lover 50 years younger. He wrote some of his, here, I'll give you some of his poems. This is from a collection called Crow with No Mouth. The translator and editor here is Stephen Berg, B-E-R-G. Really good stuff. Crow with No Mouth. They're all short little poems in that great Zen way. Sin like a madman until you can't do anything else. No room for any more. Sexual love's attachment pain is deeper than I can know. Wind soothes my thoughts. This lust, my ceaseless koan, impossibly happy. The koan is that famous teaching riddle. Like, what is the sound of one hand clapping? Or if a tree falls in the forest, no one's there to make a sound. Or someone asks, what is the Buddha? And somebody else says, dried shit on a stick. You're supposed to meditate on this. This is your focus. So you basically bang your head against the koan until your brain stops, and then you get enlightenment. Very primitively and inaccurately. A woman is enlightenment when you're with her, and the red thread of both your passions flares inside you, and you see. I remember one quiet afternoon, she fished out my cock, bent over, played with it in her mouth for at least an hour. "10 fussy days running this temple, all red tape. Look me up if you want to in the bar, whorehouse, or fish market." So, yeah, a little bit different than the celibacy of the Buddha there. What happened? How did we get from there to there? Well, along the way from India to Japan. So Zen, I should explain. Zen is a Japanese word. The school though actually came out of China, as I said, with Bodhidharma coming into China and having this whole thing with the emperor and going to the Shaolin temple. In China, they came to call it Chan, C-H-A-N, often with an apostrophe between the C-H and the A. Zen, it's the same word, the same character, just a different pronunciation. Of course, in China, you also have Taoism, and Zen, Chan, very heavily influenced by Taoism. In fact,
guys and brought you off roll.
Oh, I cannot remember who I'm thinking of here. Houston Smith, I think it was, said that basically if you take Indian Buddhism and filter through Chinese Taoism, you get Zen. You get Chan. Taoism, of course, is very sex positive. They're always talking about the valley spirits. They always refer to the Tao in very feminine terms. And they had some pretty powerful sexual yoga. They would practice. Some of the Taoist classics talk about if we could have sex in the right way, we could become immortal. Live forever or die trying, man. It's not a bad way to pass the time, right? But so you got a very different influence coming in to the practice there. Taoism, very earthy. Yeah, we're gonna sit around, and drink some wine, write some poems, make love, and in comes the Buddhism with that. These were an interesting combination of challenge that came out of that over the centuries. So this philosophy of Ikkyu's is often called red thread Zen, that red thread of passion. Obviously red is a very biological color. There's a lot of red stuff that comes out of our bodies, but it's also traditionally it was I understand red threads were used in the stockings of courtesans. So this red thread kind of has a dual meaning, a little double entendre there. So how can we sort this out? There's no question that love and sex a lot of potential to get us into trouble with that whole attachment forming thing, right? It causes a lot of misery. You know, we have a crush on somebody. Oh, if I could only get with Mary Sue. Oh, my. And then we don't get a date and we're miserable. Or we do get a date, and then the reality doesn't match up to our fantasy, right? Mary Sue chews with her mouth open. Mary Sue is not very good in bed. Damn, this is not the way I thought it was going to be. Or it does work out, and you have a relationship, and then the relationship ends, and you're sad and upset about that. I mean, the best that you can hope for is that the relationship ends when one of you dies. This is as successful as it gets. And in between, you've got all the possibilities: jealousy, disappointment, obsession, fear, all this really great stuff. So what can we do about this, right? Well, kind of the traditional thing you find in a lot of religions, of course, is celibacy. If we don't have sex, then we can't misuse sex. So goes the thought. Of course, that's assuming that people actually keep the vow. You can look at the Catholic Church and see that maybe that doesn't work very well on that front. But even if you get someone who takes that vow of celibacy and can keep it, sex is energy. We have a tremendous amount of energy tied up in sex because, if our ancestors weren't very sexual, they wouldn't have become ancestors. Let's face it. This is the red thread that brings us into this world. So if we can find a way to use that energy, that's great. Celibacy doesn't let us do that. There's a well-known Zen koan, story about a laywoman who was supporting a monk, like letting this monk live in a hut in her backyard, basically. For years, giving him food, supporting him, and everything. And so one day she decides to give this monk a little test. Let's see how he's doing here. And sends her beautiful young niece in, dressed very provocatively. Yeah, she goes in, sits down on the monk's lap while he's meditating, and asks, "How is it now, O monk?" Cold ashes, no fire. So the girl goes back and reports to her aunt what the monk had said, and the lady is pissed. She is incensed. She says, "Get out of here, you fraud! You charlatan! Get out of here!" He had failed to use that energy. This girl was bringing a lot of heat, right? His job was to turn that heat into energy, to use it in some way to help all sentient beings. Remember, this is Mahayana Buddhism. We're all in this thing together. We got to help each other. This is a big concept here. We got to help each other. So if somebody comes in with this energy, it's your job to use it in some way. So, what could he have done? Could he just, have her right there? Well, maybe not. If it would just been for his own woohoo, his own release, his own passion, without any regard for her, then he would just be getting deeper into that attachment thinking. So what could he do? I'm not a Zen master, and I'm not that monk. I don't know where he was, but cold ashes, no fire was clearly not the right answer because he wasn't using what was there.
Well, who is this laywoman to judge him and tell him he's a charlatan?
She was the one paying the bills.
True.
Here's another story, a little bit longer, from the Korean Zen tradition. It's about a dude called Wan Ho, who was a really classy teacher. He was an advisor to the king and everything. And he heard legends about some great teacher up in the mountains, and he went to see this teacher. And they had a little talk, a little discussion, and after this discussion, Wan Ho said, "Wow, yeah, this guy really knows his stuff." So he says, "Oh, please show me. Please teach me." He's like, "Okay." So they go down to the red light district of the town. The master took Wan Ho's arm and walked up to the door of a geisha house. Rings his bell. This is the master goes around. This thing is always, he's going through town like ringing his bell. Ding, 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 ding. And he's saying, Daean, Daean, great peace. Great peace. Daean, Daean, Daean. So he goes, rings his bell. And the door opens, there's a beautiful woman standing there, and the master says, "Today I brought the great monk Wan Ho to visit you." "Oh, Wan Ho!" Wan Ho blushes. The woman blushed, her eyes grew large. She led them upstairs in great happiness, fear, and exhilaration that the famous, handsome monk had come to her. She prepared food and wine, and the master says, "For 20 years you've kept company with kings and princes and monks. It's not good for a monk to live in heaven all the time. He must also visit hell and save the people there who are wallowing in their desires. Hell, too, is like this." So the big Zen thing, just like this, before conceptual thought. Boom, just as it is. "So tonight you will ride this wine straight to hell." "But I've never broken a single precept before," Mongo said. "Have a good trip," said the master. So then the master turns to the whore and says, "Don't you know it's a sin to give wine to a monk? Aren't you afraid of going to hell?" "No," the woman said. "Wan Ho will come and save me." "Very good answer," said the master. So Wan Ho stayed the night, broke more than one of the Buddhist precepts. The next morning, he took off his elegant robes and went dancing through the streets barefoot and in tatters. We are human beings. We come out of this red thread. When we try to deny it, we're denying a big part of really what we are. And anytime that we deny the facts, we are not going to have very successful outcomes. So celibacy, this is the problem with celibacy, is it tends to deny this outcome. I'm not saying it's wrong. You can do celibacy with that understanding. Not many people do, however. Okay? So if celibacy is not necessarily the right course, and we should also think about most of these celibacy teachings were given in an age before birth control. If you were going to have sex, it meant you were going to become a family man or woman, a householder. You couldn't be a monk and have sex, because if you did, you were following that whole family thing. And the whole point of being a monk in that tradition was to not have a family, to be completely dedicated to the community. Now, interestingly, now in Japan, Zen monks get married, have families. It is part of the culture there. It is accepted in some places. But celibacy was also a tool used to control the power of clergy, especially in medieval times, for example. If you were a priest, you controlled a lot of property in the name of the church. And if you had a son, you would want to kind of pass that power on to your son rather than on to someone who might be the best manager for the church. So to control the political power, celibacy was often used for the clergy there. But if we say celibacy is out, what are other options, right? Well, of course, you've got the usual answer of marriage. Find one person, and that's it. You can only have sex with this person for the rest of your life. Sex is really nasty and disgusting, so save it for someone who loves you. It's one thing, right? No premarital sex. It's just only this one person. That's it. Well, then you get the problem that this doesn't remove all those problems of jealousy, disappointment, obsession, fear, all that stuff. I mean, getting married does not magically make it all better, oddly enough. So that's why you see the statistics on infidelity, divorce. Obviously marriage is as we know it, is not doing a real good job of dealing with this issue. Also, marriage, as we know it in our culture, is based on a very interesting and very inaccurate concept that you can promise to love someone forever, that you can make a promise about your feelings in the future. You can't do that. This is a big idea in Buddhism. Everything is impermanent. Nothing stays the same. You also find the same idea in Taoism and a lot of Eastern philosophy, right? Nothing stays the same. Nothing has its own separate, unique existence that is permanent. Things come and things go. This is true of our feelings as it is for anything else. But marriage asks us to promise that in 20 years, I'm going to still have this feeling for you. This doesn't work. This is not something that you can promise. Now, it's not to say that there aren't often times when it does work, and you can. It's like if I plant a seed, I can water that seed, I can make sure that seed has just the right amount of sunlight, I can really care for that plant when it comes up. I can't guarantee, though, that that seed, that plant will still be there in 20 years. I can't, if I'm making a promise on that, my mouth is making a check to my ass can of cash, man. I say I can promise to do my damnedest, to give it all of my energy, but I can't promise to love, to still be in love in that way. But this is what marriage in our culture and in most cultures asks. So now that the legal and social structures are more forgiving of divorce, you see more and more divorce. So marriage is not necessarily the best option there, right? So if celibacy is out, if marriage is an inadequate general solution to the problem. I mean, again, celibacy can be fine for some people, marriage can be fine for some people, but if you want to get to the general rule, what's the underlying thing that everyone maybe can agree on here? What can we get to here? Do we just say, hey, you want to go to bed? Just jump into anybody, just jump into bed with anybody who's willing? Well, then you're just jumping into the middle of all of those problems. This is not the best thing. I don't know if any of you know Savage Love, the advice columnist, Dan Savage, fantastic guy. I really recommend that stuff. His column runs on a lot of the alternative weekly papers. It's online. He does a podcast. Very sex-positive advice. And poly positive, gay positive, kink positive. I don't think I've ever heard or seen him write anything that was judgmental, except when it was really, called for. But he has a rule that he's mentioned several times about an older person getting involved with a younger person. He says it's the campsite rule. You got to leave them better than you found them. I hope everyone is obeying that here. I hope we all leave our campsites better than we found them. I think that's a really good rule, and we should take that not just where there's age disparity, but for every relationship. Every relationship should leave both people, or however many people involved, better than you were before the relationship, right? If you have a potential to get into a tangle, whether it's for a single night or for a long-term relationship, the question that you might want to ask is it something that's going to leave both me and this other person or other people better off? And so what do we mean by better off? Is this going to give me some money? Is that what I mean? So that I can get some money? No. What do we mean by better off in a spiritual context, right? So the thing that gets in our way the most in our spiritual quest is the ego. Right? It's this separate self. It's this lack of connection, feeling like just here by myself. And I think it was Alan Watts who talked about kind of the ceramic model, that we are built. This is the biblical account. We're made out of clay, right? The divine builds us, and then we break. We're separated from the world, torn out, like formed, and boom, boom, boom. As opposed to feeling like we come out of the world like a leaf comes out of the tree, and we're connected to it. So if our relationships can help us feel more connected to other people, then this is what we can look for. Now, the Buddha talked about 4 aspects of loving kindness towards everyone, Maitri; compassion for the suffering of all beings, Karuna; sympathetic joy, Mudita, which is delighting in the happiness of others. And very, very interesting parallel to that in the Pali community. Talk about compersion. When one of your lovers is going off with somebody else, and they're going to have a good time, a great experience, and you can be happy for them. It's pretty hard, but it's a wonderful thing. You can get sympathetic joy from someone. So it's interesting that the Buddha talked about something very similar. And equanimity, just calmly accepting whatever comes without being a drama queen about it. Sorry, my Sanskrit is not very good, so please pardon me if you know how badly I'm mastering the pronunciation of some of these terms. So if our relationships help us build up these 4 aspects of love, if they help us be more compassionate if they help us be more loving kind, if they help us be more compassionate to take sympathetic joy when someone else is having a good time, if they help us just kind of take whatever comes and not get all, but just let it go and be, then that's a great thing. I think any relationship can do this, but the sexual relationships, because of that sexual energy that's there, have an even greater potential to be of help. Now, when I talk about sexual energy, there's that Taoist sexual yoga, there's that tantric sex where you're moving chi around something that's fine, that's great, and I actually do some classes about that too from the Taoist yoga perspective. But it's not really the point here. The idea is sharing that energy. Sharing that energy with someone else, is a great way to bring about some joy. So what does that tell us about casual sex, right? If we come back to something a lot of us might be thinking about the bonfire tonight, and it's like, there's a pretty person of the appropriate gender or genders, as the case may be. What if I just get with this person in a very casual manner? Is that okay? Well, what do we mean by casual? Casual can mean, look at my notes here. So, it's always a good cheat to look something up in the dictionary and think about the different senses a word can have. Because casual can mean irresponsible, right? No, that's not a good way to have sex. But casual can mean something that happens without a plan. That's a great way to have a romantic encounter, right? Something you don't plan on that just kind of falls out of the blue. Well, that's great. Or something that happens from time to time, right? It's not something where you maybe see someone all the time, but
not necessarily committed.
Yeah, not necessarily not committed in that respect. But there's someone who you only get to see. They live across the country. And, you have your festival fling, and every time you get together at Starwood, this is the person that you're with. Great. This is a way that you're building compersion. This is someone who has their own life, and you're really happy when they go back home with their husband, wife, partner, whatever, and you hear, oh wow, they had that great relationship. They got that whole thing going on over there. You make this connection with someone that helps you be happy when someone else is happy. Fantastic! This is a great way to be working on our spiritual development here, right? And of course, casual can also mean natural, right? Something you do without artifice, without trying too hard. And we are nature-based religion people, are we not? Yes. So if by casual, talk about casual sex, I mean it can happen naturally, right? Hey, that's right up our alley there. But you watch somebody do something in an effortless manner. They make something look easy. There's usually a lot of work behind it. You watch a dancer moving across the stage. Oh, she's hardly putting any effort into what she's doing at all. But it took a lot of practice to get there, right? So we need some groundwork here, and that groundwork is mindfulness. Coming back and paying attention to what's going on all the time, and not getting caught up in our thoughts and our fantasies and our desires, but just seeing what's there. This is the great thing that romantic relationships do. It keeps calling us back to see our partner and who are. A great bit of wisdom from a 70s pop song. You might remember the Pina Colada song. I was tired of my lady. We've been together too long. Like a one I recorded. Oh, the favorite song. The guy's talking about how he's bored with his woman. So he's reading the personal ads in the paper. Back in the days we had personal ads in the paper rather than OkCupid and Craigslist. And he sees this ad for this woman who's like, oh yeah, she seems like the thing. I wanna get with her. Yeah, this woman sounds a lot more interesting than my old girlfriend here. They set up a date, meets the woman, and of course, it's his girlfriend. Yeah, and he said, the last verse is, I never knew that you like pina coladas and getting caught in the rain and the smell of the ocean, the taste of champagne, blah, blah, blah. I never knew. And now he's opened his mind. He's gone back to that beginner's mind. He's rediscovered that I don't know. He let go of his attachment thinking and saw what was really there. This is that idea of mindfulness. This is what a good relationship.
So you shouldn't let yourself get desensitized to the person in front of you.
Absolutely, absolutely, and not just to that person, but that person is a reminder, of not getting desensitized to the world. This is the great thing about coming out here. How many people do you see walking by looking up at the sky out here? And they don't do it at home. I think. So, of course, I live close to a city, so there's not that much. But so there's stars. Yeah, there's the moon. There's stuff up there, and I could be looking at that. And I come here and I get reminded. Oh, yeah, wow, look at that. Hey, don't forget this. Don't forget. Look.
The earth is still here.
It's still here. But then we go about our business and we get sucked back into, that email from the boss. Oh, gotta go here, gotta go there, gotta do that thing. We get all back into our heads. And then, if we are lucky, we have a lover who keeps calling us back to the moment to see what's really there, to not be taken for granted. And sometimes, that's a difficult process. That lover has to grab you and say, hey, don't take me for granted. Sometimes the world does that to you, sometimes fire reminds you not to take it for granted, sometimes, the weather reminds you not to take it for granted, sometimes we get reminded that driving our cars around is not something to take for granted, that there's a whole bunch of stuff that has to happen for that. It's usually something a little bit disturbing to our everyday life has to happen to call us back. So if we can avoid having to get struck upside the head with a 2x4 by being reminded, here is this wonderful person, and I really want to share energy. I want to share part of my life experience with this person. And that is a great way that that relationships can help with our spiritual growth. That's about all I've got to say on the subject. I will point out that this talk mostly came out of my forthcoming book on Zen paganism, which hopefully will be out by this time next year. This is the first draft. If you would like more information about that, I will let you get to my mailing list, or my website is in the program guide. I'd like to throw it open for general discussion.
So, one of the biggest reasons that I was interested in becoming a was, I know a little bit about yours when you class. So,
You can close it a little bit there. They're starting the sound over there.
Yeah. So, I obviously I would like to say something that makes the mind any stretch of the imagination, but I know a decent amount. I really. I used to be Catholic.
Hooray for ex-Catholics! Hey!
Yeah.
We're feeling much better now,
yes,
aren't we?
Yes, you have no idea. I went to a bunch of religion for something. And Buddhism was the closest I really came to find something that made sense. And the one thing that really threw me off, that really what makes sense is the concepts of not non-self, right?
Right.
You're not supposed to have ego. But at the same time, the idea of passion, where you kind of have to look at other people as individual egos. Unless it's a general aura for everything. But I always have to look at others.
Right. So, Anhatman, very core idea in Buddhism. Now, you might have heard, if you've read anything about Hinduism, you might have heard of the idea of Atman and Brahman. Atman in Hindu practice is this idea that this is our individual spirit, our soul, our self. And kind of the idea is that our individual self is one with Brahman, with the divine. And like the divine is kind of, there are a couple different takes on this. The idea that the divine has kind of broken itself up into a bunch of little pieces to go out and play in the world, and it'll come back together, and that's nirvana. That's the end of everything coming back together into nirvana. But it's all the same stuff. It's just broken up into little pieces. Now Buddha rejected that. He said it's not even broken up. There's not even this separation. There is not an Atman. There is not a separate self at all. His Thich Nhat Hanh, contemporary Zen master, he uses the word interbeing. that everything inter-is. There is not a separate existence. That if you look at this paper, this paper does not exist separately from the rest of the universe. Okay? If you look at this paper with the right perception, you see that there was a tree, and if there was a tree, there was sun, there was water, there was soil, there was someone who cut down the tree, there was somebody who made the machine that pulped the wood, that made the paper, and go all the way back to the whole universe. Right here. The whole universe is here. This is here. There's nothing separate about it. A good analogy is a wave or a whirlpool. You look at water, and the wave is not separate, broken off from the water. I mean, the wave exists. It is there, but it's not. And you can look at it and see a whirlpool. Well, it's there. You can see it, but it's our concept. We draw a line. We put a label and say, this is the whirlpool. This is not the whirlpool. But you can't take the whirlpool out of the water. The whirlpool is there because there's a rock here, and because there's water all the way up here flowing down the hill. There's water flowing down the hill because there were clouds. There were clouds because there was the sun. And again, it all comes together. You can't pull anything apart. This anatma is a very powerful idea. And again, we're trying to get to a earth religion, nature-based spirituality and think, hey, it's all connected, man. This is a pretty important concept. So, there's this idea of no self. Now, there's the idea of not having an ego, not being invested in ego in the way of ego, right? I'm the best. I'm the best. So there's ego in that sense of ego. There's also ego in the sense of your feeling of being a separate mind, a separate existence in the universe, the I, the Atman. So what Buddhism says is that there are some enlightened people out there who have big egos in that sense, but might understand that also in the same sense that they are not ego and I, that they are a whirlpool. That's a wonderful idea, because if you understand that you're not the world, you're not just the whirlpool, that you're a little tangle of atoms that's happening right now, but you are the whole river, then you don't, or at least I, such insofar as there is an I who is separate from words, man, words.
You have to have certain concepts to function
Yes.
in the world.
Yes, and that's the other thing is if you get stuck on this, Zen will smack you upside the head and say get back to practicality, chop wood, carry water. But this I, if we understand that the I is not something that can break, there is no self. There's a Bante, I believe it was, when he had his great enlightenment, he had a great fear of death. And when he had his great enlightenment, he realized that he couldn't die because he, in quotation marks, had never been born in the first place. That he was a character in the story that his brain was telling. Think of it that way. There's a brain here, insofar as people may question that, but there is a brain here in terms of normal physical universe. If we accept the usual postulate that there is some kind of physical reality going on, I'm not a brain in a vat somewhere, and this isn't the Matrix. There is a brain here. Is there a self? If the brain makes a self, there could be a self. If the brain makes other, there could be other. But there's not. I can go into the brain, and we look for the seat of the soul, right? The pineal gland. We'll keep taking stuff apart. We'll go in, and we don't see anything there. There's not this core thing. A great metaphor. We got to look a little bit more time, right?
I'm sorry to interrupt. We had a diaper emergency.
Yeah. Priority interrupt. Absolutely, no problem. A great example that's used sometimes is building a house. So you're putting a house together, right? There's not something that you put in and then it's a house. The house is all the parts. It's interesting to think about. When does it become a house? Right? One day there's just a piece of land, a pile of lumber, and some bricks. And then a couple days later, oh, there's a little bit of a framework. Well, it's not a house, it's just a frame. A couple days later, there's walls are up. Well, they're making a house, but it's not a house yet. And at some point, well, it's up. Well, it's a house, but they haven't finished painting it yet. Wait a minute, how did it become a house? When did it become a house? That's all up here. That's our agreement on when it's a house and when it's not. And if you want to get really controversial, try applying that thinking to the abortion debate. But all these things are labels. We put a label on it so we can get stuff done. And labels are not bad. We can get stuff done with labels. When I go into cafes, I want an iced coffee. I can communicate and say I want a configuration of matter that is like this, and not get all hung up on
where is that line? Where should you stop getting hung up on designations,
right?
As opposed to understanding that we are all connected.
Yeah, we're all one. But if I try and use your credit card, it's identity theft, right? So that's it's a good question, and I don't think there is a simple answer for it. It is more or less, what do you want to accomplish? When you're trying to get something practical done, use the tools that are useful for that. It's a great idea that Robert Anton Wilson, he talked about reality tunnels, moving back and forth between different reality tunnels. It's a great and important thing. When you're doing science, I'm gonna go do some science, right? I've got a certain set of assumptions. I'm going to go into my lab and I want everything to be very controlled. Boom, this is the way things are going to be. But then, you go out into the world, the same scientist who demands rigid definitions and objectivity in the lab, then goes home and, talks about how much he loves his wife and his kids. Wait a minute, what are you talking about love? I can't observe this love. Let me measure this love here, Oh, no, you're trying to do something different there. It's not the appropriate tools to use. You need a different reality tunnel to deal with your relationships, perhaps, than you do with rocks or chemicals in the lab, the physical world. So that would be my answer to that is, what are you trying to do? Which reality tunnel is going to be useful there? And a lot of Zen stories come back to that point. A monk has come to study with a master for a couple of months, high up in the mountains in some monastery. He's been there for a couple of months. He's like, okay, I think I've learned everything that this Zen master has to teach me. I think I'll be on my way. He said, oh, okay, then you can come in and just ask you a question. Yes, you see that big boulder over there? Yes, of course. Does that boulder exist outside your mind or only inside your head? Oh, it's only inside my head. Well, I hope you get lots of sleep tonight, because if you're carrying that boulder down the mountain in your head, it will be a very hard walk. Zen is always calling people back away from speculation and away from theory to get into the here and now. And this is the great practical aspect of why Zen became so popular in the warrior class in Japan. This is why Zen has never been the majority practice in Japan. It was always, sorry? Well, and within Buddhism, they had both Buddhism and Shinto in Japan, and still do today. And they kind of combined them in interesting ways. You can go at the New Year's festival and go to a Buddhist temple, and you'll see people there who have just been to the Shinto shrine and gotten the arrow talisman. There's an old ritual that they used to do. They would build like a big straw demon and shoot it with arrows, like a big voodoo doll, right? And then that went down to just putting an arrow up on your wall to scare off demons. And now you go to the temple at the Shinto shrine in New Year's, and you get this talisman to put in. So you'll see somebody with a couple of those in their bag at the Buddhist temple. They can go get them. But within the Buddhist world, there are a couple of different schools of Buddhism, and Zen became very influential because it was favored by the warrior class, the shoguns, who ruled for about 600 years. The emperor was still there, but he was mostly a figurehead, more of a religious leader, up until the mid-1800s, where he got restored to power. So, because Zen is very practical, right? It helps you cultivate a state of mind that helps you not get cut to bits when someone is swinging a sword at you, which is really useful. So it became popular with the ruling class, the warrior class, and because of that, it kind of got out into the aesthetic and into the culture in a lot of ways. You know, there's all these Zen arts. You know, everything from arranging flowers to making a cup of tea to the martial arts. But Zen itself is always a minority practice. More esoteric, or more devotional forms of Buddhism have been more popular with that. Where you go and you pray to the Buddha. You know, the Buddha is considered a deity. You go and pray to the Buddha as opposed to sit. Yeah, as opposed to sit down and meditate. You know, sort of thing, which is more. Of course, Zen has its share of deities. It's got some good ones. I'm particularly fond of Jizo, who's the Bodhisattva of the earth, which is a very interesting idea that Jizo is Jizo, the Bodhisattva of the earth, who I think is not very well known here, but I think this is, I want to talk up Jizo in the pagan scene, because I think, hey, you've got an earth spirit, who in some versions of the story of the Buddha was very important, was the spirit that bore the Buddha witness when he was sitting under the bo tree. It's a whole other long story, but it'll be in the book. But Zen was never the point. Is Zen was a warrior practice, it was a minority practice, but it had a great influence on the general culture because it was popular with the ruling classes. Yeah. Any other questions?
So, ultimately, how do you reconcile concept of love, compassion, how do you relate just these personal feelings with our egos, our consciousness is an illusion?
Our experience is there. There is an experience here. There is not necessarily an I having that experience. And I can look at another experience and realize, illusionary pain still hurts. There's a great little bit in, Aldous Huxley, the writer, of course, famous in Brave New World. He wrote his last novel. It's called Island. You won't be reading this one in high school, unfortunately. It's kind of his antidote to Brave New World. And it postulates a culture that is, off on this little island somewhere, and it's mostly Buddhist with some of the native spirituality and a little bit of Shivaism from Hindu thrown in there. It's kind of his attempt to portray a sane society, what a sane society would look like. Wow, hey, what a crazy idea. And like I said, it was his final novel, so it's based on all his years of thought about spirituality and education and sociology and everything. There's a wonderful passage in there where these characters are watching a puppet show, and the puppet show is a satire of our everyday world, and these two characters, they're having some kind of a romantic thing, and everyone is laughing at these lovers pining for each other because they know, like, boy, these people are really behaving stupidly. But somebody says, oh yeah, they're behaving stupidly, but stupid people still hurt too. Illusionary pain that comes from ignorance of our own true nature, it's still real pain. And if I want to get beyond my own ego, if I'm getting stuck in my own illusionary sense of self, how can I open that up? Love, compassion. So if I want to get out of my own ego, having sympathy for other people, feeling other people's pain, sharing in their joy, helps break me free from that illusion. It reminds me that even if they're not real in the sense of being separate from the rest of the universe. I mean, it's not to say that if Buddhism does not deny reality and say that this is an illusion. It says that our concept, how we categorize, how we draw lines, how we put labels on things, is not always the way to get out of suffering. Obviously, it's a very practical, useful thing, from in getting stuff done. I want that. We can reach an understanding. But in terms, when we want to get into that deep level, we can't use. Mandalas. Yeah, sand mandalas.
Yeah, that perfect.
Yeah, they're but there's great Buddhist practice. If you've never seen if you've ever seen the Tibetan, I think it's the Tibetan Buddhist practice where they very laboriously lay these down, and then whoosh, away it goes.
Those arts, you can even put up separate. It's like that is the lines that we draw around the world. And once you wipe that all away, you have this everything and nothing.
Yeah, that's the big. People talk a lot when we talk about Zen, this topic of satori, this enlightenment experience, often comes up. And it's the idea. It's when you have the moment where all those concepts disappear for just that. But then you got to go back, and you're still in the world. It's not like. So it's a very important point about that, actually, because you read a lot of Zen stuff, they talk about satori, or they say, and then upon hearing this guy became enlightened. Well, but it's not like his brain was forever put into enlightenment mode. It doesn't work that way. He had a mystical experience for that. But it's like being born. There's still a lot of growth that goes on after that. It's just, and there were some early schools of Zen, and you'll still hear some teachers talk about it, say that's not even necessary. You don't have to have it all come together for a moment. There is slow cultivation is possible. Because it's the idea of ideas that gets us into trouble. Which is why there's a very famous Zen koan, and I'll end with this one just to say that to put some context around all this talking that I've been doing. This story asks us to imagine a man who's hanging by his teeth on a tree branch. His arms are tied behind him, and he can't reach any purchase with his feet. And somebody comes up to him and asks the fundamental question: why did Bodhidharma found Zen? Why did Bodhidharma come from the West? Which in Zen language means, please tell me about Zen. Explain. Tell me about Zen. Oh, the guy opens up his mouth to answer. He falls to his death. Some versions say he falls straight to hell. So if he doesn't, then he's failed in his duty, right? Because this is Mahayana Buddhism. We're all in this together. This guy is me. I got to help him because, otherwise I'm stuck in my own illusionary ego. I got a duty. And if he doesn't speak, then he's failed in that duty. In some version of the story, is killed and goes straight to hell for failing in his duty. What do? To open up your mouth is already a mistake. Words. So, if I had some pithy thing to say about that, I would be a Zen master. I would not. It's just a wonderful illustration of the danger of opening your mouth. In fact, it's a wonderful book called "Open Mouth Already a Mistake" by a contemporary Zen master. Thank you all for coming out. That's about all the time we've got. So if you want to hang out, chat some more, we certainly can do that. I will again push the mailing list because this is all about relentless self-promotion.
Goal.
Yeah, this
workshops.
Yeah, this is my my business plan. Have you ever seen the South Park episode with the underpants gnome? Step 1, collect underpants. Step 2, question mark. Step 3, profit. I've got step 1, relentless self-promotion. Step 2, I haven't figured out yet. Step 3, profit.
So why do you think there's really not much of a Buddhist presence here?
Well, there are a lot of people who are interested in Buddhism,
Right.
I think, and I don't know that it's quite. I think I'm hoping that there are a lot of people out there who
Buddhism doesn't have as much spectrum.
Yeah.
And it isn't as a pagan festival originally, so that's more,
Yeah. Well, the book. There actually are some very tremendous historical connections between the pagan revival and the Buddhist revival. They get into Buddhism coming together as a world religion because for a long time it was fractured. This country was Buddhist, this country was Buddhist, but they didn't say, "Hey, we are Buddhists," together. And going back to like the mid 1800s, the Theosophical Society, Helena Blavatsky was a spiritualist medium who founded this Theosophical Society. Was trying to get a world religion going, and there's interesting politics about that too. But they went to India and then Ceylon and then Japan and helped put all the Buddhist countries back in touch with one another and helped introduce Buddhism to the West. Around the same time, the woman who was the head of the London Lodge of the Theosophical Society, she saw these people doing all this Eastern stuff. She said, "No, I'm actually more into the Christian mysticism." She went away from that. She got into Hermeticism and Kabbalah. She became a mentor to two of the people who founded the Golden Dawn. Of course, was the organization that Aleister Crowley joined up with and got his magical training in the Golden Dawn. Crowley later inducted Gerald Gardner into the OTO. So the Theosophical Society in the mid-1800s is ancestral to both paganism and to Buddhism as it exists today. Aleister Crowley studied a lot of Buddhism in his early years before he went off into the whole Gerald Gardner traveled extensively in the East and had some encounters with Buddhism. Was very influential in the counterculture of the 60s that a lot of paganism. So there are some real historical connections. I'm hoping there are enough people out there who have like one book by Starhawk and one book by Thich Nhat Hanh or the Dalai Lama, and they'll see this Zen paganism book and think, oh, it's interesting.